So there are lots of videos out there from fitness influencers, natural bodybuilders, and bodybuilders on drugs talking about what they eat in a day. And a lot of it is not relevant to you. It's not relevant to you because a lot of it is about what they do to cut down and get into shape temporarily. And while, yes, they're lean, they're not permanently lean. They usually employ very extreme measures to get into that kind of shape. And as popular as they are, I'll ask you this one very important question. Who wants to look fantastic for a couple weeks out of the year? It may be great for bodybuilding competitions and photo shoots, but if you're like me, you want to look good all year round. But see, here's the problem, and it's something I learned working with hundreds of men and women over the past 30 plus years. Weight loss is easy. In fact, every single person listening to me right now has probably lost weight and lost fat at some point in time. The hard part is sticking to your diet consistently for years on end. And the conventional approaches are really good for temporary results, but don't really do very well long term. And sometimes you need an unconventional approach to find a solution to issues and problems that simply aren't being solved. And there's no one more unconventional than me. And I use a system I created called Naturally Intense High Intensity Training, whereby I train with blistering intensity with workouts that last 10, 15, maximum 20 minutes, just 3 times a week. And that's not the way I'm training now that I'm 50 years old. It's the way I've been training for the past 33 years and allowed me to go from looking like this to this. And most importantly, without drugs. That's why this particular video is a little bit different. It's different, number one, because I'm 50 years old and I walk around with sub 10% body fat all year round for years on end. That's right. Not for summer, not for photo shoots, all the time. This is what I look like. So when it comes to sticking to your diet long term, I know a thing or two. And what I'm going to do in this video is share with you the secrets to how I'm able to stay on such a meticulous diet without any cravings whatsoever long term. Even more importantly, I'm going to share with you the principles that allow me to stick to my diet long term for decades on end. What's worked for me and also for the hundreds of clients I've trained over the past 33 years of my career. And the thing about long-term good eating practices is that it allows you not just to lose body fat and look ripped and muscular, but allows you to do so and stay permanently in fantastic shape. And I'm going to lay out for you exactly what I'm eating right now on a daily basis. I know a lot of you out there wondering how many calories I'm taking in every day, how much fats, how much protein, how much carbohydrates. So stay to the end because I'm going to break all that down for you as well. So let's get going with exactly what I'm eating on a regular basis now, because I'm certain some of these principles are going to transform your life. So let's start with breakfast. Now, I know intermittent fasting is extremely popular, and a lot of people these days who are into any kind of fitness or dietary practices tend to skip breakfast, but that's not something I do. I have breakfast every single morning, every single day. Never skip breakfast, and recommend it for all of my clients. And when I tell you what I have for breakfast and why I have it, it'll make sense to you. Now, I always start my breakfast with oat bran cereal. Oat bran cereal is an excellent source of slow-burning carbohydrates, but even more importantly, it's an extremely high fiber source. And for breakfast, I will have as much as 3 uncooked cups of oat bran cereal. That's a lot of fiber. To give you a sense of exactly how much fiber that is, I would have to eat the equivalent of a cup of cooked lentils, a cup of raspberries, a medium-sized pear, a cup of cooked broccoli, a medium-sized sweet potato with skin, a medium-sized apple with skin, and a medium-sized carrot to get in 45 grams of fiber. That's a lot of fiber and a lot of carbohydrates. And here's the rationale behind it. All of the principles that I use when it comes to nutrition are founded on looking at our ancestral past and figuring out exactly what nutritional profiles were of our human forefathers from 2.2 million years all the way down to today, and looking at what were the nutritional profiles and ratios when things like obesity, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and car diseases in general simply were not an issue. And we need only look at modern hunter-gatherer societies to see that some of them are able to maintain exceptionally impressive physiques that are lean and in very many cases muscular throughout all stages of their lives. And from archaeological findings, we know for a fact that they're the ones that are eating as close to the diets that our ancestors were eating. One of the most striking findings is how much fiber our ancestors were consuming and how much fiber as well modern hunter-gatherers consume in a day. Now, the average American barely gets in about 15 grams of fiber per day, And the general recommended daily allowance is somewhere around 25 to 30 grams of fiber per day from solid food sources, not supplements. But here's the problem. Analysis of corporate and also diets of modern hunter-gatherers find that they can consume, on average, 120 grams of fiber per day. That's right, 120 grams of fiber per day. That's a ridiculous amount of fiber. And it's much higher than any Western nutritional recommendations. But since fiber has such a tremendous regulatory effect on overall appetite, energy levels, immune system, and also cravings, I have slowly, over the course of decades, increased my fiber intake to the point where right now, I am consuming 60 grams of fiber per day. That's a lot of fiber, but if it ever was a secret that allows someone like me to really stick to my diet as meticulously as I have over the years, it's because of my very high fiber intake. And by having 3 cups of oat bran cereal first thing in the morning, it not only gives me a sustained amount of energy for the entire day, but all that fiber as well helps me maintain stable blood sugar levels for the entire day, which means I don't suffer as much from things like cravings. And it's this very strategy of front-loading carbohydrates and fiber first thing in the morning that I've used with hundreds of men and women as well over the past 3 decades and make it much easier for them to stick with their diet. Now, with the oat bran cereal, I'll also have about 7 egg whites, as what I'm looking to do first thing in the morning is make sure I get my carbohydrate intake as high as possible and also get as much protein as I can at the same time. Because after waking up from that fast that you undergo while you're sleeping, your muscles wake up needing carbohydrates for energy to take you through the day, and it also needs protein to build and repair muscle tissue. Now, right there, the fact that I have egg whites, we have some people thinking that I have something against egg yolks. And I don't. Egg yolks are actually a fantastic source of fats. But here's the issue. Because my focus is trying to get as much fiber and protein first thing in the morning, if I added fats in the form of egg yolks, it would limit the amount of fiber I could consume. 3 cups of oat bran cereal is a lot, as is 7 egg whites. I simply would not be able to consume that much food if I was consuming the eggs with the yolks as well. Because fats act on our appetites very much the same way that fiber does in terms of it reduces how much you feel like you want to keep on eating. I want to have my fat later on in the day when I may be more susceptible to cravings. A strategy, again, designed to help me stick with my diet. Now, back in the day, I would always have a snack between breakfast and lunch. But because my fiber intake now is so high, I simply don't feel the need for it. However, I do recommend it for almost all of my clients. So the whole idea of trying to make sure blood sugar levels stay as stable as possible over the course of the day. Now, on to lunch, which is extremely simple. I will have 2 chicken breasts and 2 boiled plantains on training days. And days I'm not training, I'll have 2 chicken breasts and only 1 boiled plantain. I drop my carbs slightly on days I'm not training and raise them on days I am training, because on training days, you need some extra carbohydrates to get you the kind of high intensity workouts that I do. But on days you're not training, your body's in recovery mode. And at that point, I will slightly increase my protein intake. And while my protein intake goes up, my carb levels go down. Always eating based on your activity levels, giving your body what it needs for that particular day. And with those chicken breasts, I'll grill them in a way where I can eat a little bit of the bones. Growing up in Trinidad, eating small amounts of bones is a common practice. And keeping as well with the vitamin and mineral ratios of ancestral diets, this allows me to maintain high calcium levels without ever having to consume dairy products, which I systematically avoid. Now, again, between lunch and dinner, I'd almost always have a snack back in the day. But these days I don't, because again, my fiber intake is so high, I simply don't feel a need to have something else between lunch and dinner. However, to maintain optimal vitamin A levels, I will have a carrot stick or 2. But again, I do recommend it for almost all of my clients. And now on to dinner, which is going to be extremely simple. It's either going to be some form of fish, salmon or cod, or bison or grass-fed beef. And that's it, a pure protein meal. And the amount that I consume is directly proportional to my trainings. Now, almost all these protein sources are also high in fats, and I'll cook them with some olive oil. As like I said, again, it's very important to have fats later in the day, as it's one more tool in your arsenal to help you stave off those cravings. So we talked about the fact that I avoid dairy, but what may come up as well is the fact that Kevin doesn't seem to have any vegetables in there, and that's true. And now for my clients, while I do recommend salad and or vegetables with their last meal, I don't consume any of that simply because it doesn't agree with me. I have done everything possible, experimenting for a year and a half, consuming conventional Western vegetables, and every single time it only left me with an upset stomach. If you know anything about my approaches, know that it's always data-driven, and a year and a half of suffering through that was extremely difficult because I really wanted to make sure it wasn't simply a matter of needing a little more time to get used to it. But bear in mind, all Western vegetables that exist today are not part of our ancestral diet, and our ancestors did exceptionally well without broccoli or lettuce in their diets. But that being said, I still highly recommend them. Now, instead, I may have an orange or two or a handful of nuts, or I may have a tablespoon of organic salt-free peanut butter. And that's it. That's all I eat for the day. Now, as far as water intake is concerned, I'll have anywhere between a gallon and a gallon and a half of water per day based on my activity levels. And in keeping with ancestral practices, there's absolutely zero added salt in my diet, which leads to an optimal sodium-potassium balance. Now, some of you out there may think that sounds like a paleo diet, and it's not. First off, let's be very, very real, because I think it's a mistake to exclude some of the excellent unprocessed and minimally processed foods that exist today, like wood bran cereal, for example, which did not exist several million years ago. But that does not mean they can't find a place in a healthy modern diet. Instead of what I look at the profiles. I look at how much protein, how much carbohydrates, how much fats, what the ratios and quantities of ancestral diets were, and do my best to try to replicate it, which comes down to the nutritional breakdown of Kevin's current diet, which is going to really surprise you because I only consume 2,200 calories per day. That's right. With all the food I just mentioned over there, that's somewhere around 2,200 to maybe 2,400 calories per day. Now, as someone weighing 205 pounds, carrying all this muscle mass and being as active doing the many different things that I do, in addition to ridiculously high intensity training 3 times a week, the recommended caloric intake of someone like me is somewhere around 3,200 calories. However, at 2,200, 2,400 calories, I feel perfectly in balance. I never get tired. I never get fatigued. I never feel low energy. And I am by no means a couch potato. And what I think accounts for it is the high fiber intake. I think it's important to realize that if your fiber intake is so much higher than what we see in modern human diets, that the rules regarding how many calories you need simply don't apply. Now, as far as protein intake is concerned, my protein intake is somewhere between 165 to 175 grams of protein per day. That's it. My fat intake is somewhere between 80 to 85 grams of fats per day, and my carbohydrate intake is somewhere around 160 to 175 grams of carbohydrates per day, which gives, as you see here, a nutritional breakdown that's extremely consistent with our ancestral and hunter diet macronutrient intakes. And equally important are the vitamin and mineral breakdowns, which again correspond with intakes of modern hunter-gatherers. So that's a lot of information, and I want to make sure that you're very, very clear with the idea that this is a diet that I have grown into over decades. It's not something I just started doing yesterday, and I do not recommend anyone to try to eat exactly the way I do. Nor should you ridiculously increase your fiber intake overnight because that could be harmful. It has to be done slowly. And what I hope you get from this are the principles by which I'm approaching my diet, because that's going to help you on your path. And understand as well, when I use the term ancestral diet, it's more like ancestral diets because humans have eaten in radically different ways and done really, really well. This is one particular way that I found that works for me and works for my clients to maintain low body fat levels and high degrees of muscle mass while still being fantastic. And like I said before, most importantly, there are no cravings. Me not having pizza, ice cream, or chocolate doesn't mean I'm superhuman. It simply means I'm in a place where I feel so good eating the way I do, so if we don't think about it. And honestly, if I ate the way I did and didn't have all this muscle and wasn't ripped, didn't have a six-pack all year round and everything else, I'd still eat this way because it feels absolutely fantastic. Now, everything I do is always based on the idea that to whom much is given, much is expected. And in keeping with that idea, I've included my free breakfast guide in the comment section below, which talks a little bit more about my approach and some of my food selections. So make sure you get it because it's completely free. And also, now that you've seen this video, you need to also watch this video on how I slowly brought my body fat level down in the first place. And that information plus this video is going to put you on the right path. So thank you so much for tuning in. Know I believe in you, and as always, Excelsior.